Howdy. Welcome back to Dion Talk. Today, what I would like to do is talk with my friend, the CEO of Hemlane, about something I actually don't know much about. I have a rental portfolio of 16 units. I reached financial freedom in 10 years or less, and I wasn't starting from the best position, but I've done it pretty much on paper or with an Excel spreadsheet. In the first couple of years, I didn't even have leases. And those first few years went horribly bad. So I know that this has to be run like a business. So one of the things I'm looking at doing now is expanding how I run my business with actual professional software. And Hemlane is the one I'm going to be looking at. So Dana, if you could, tell me a little bit about Hemlane and how you think it's going to impact my portfolio, since I have literally been using an Excel spreadsheet.
And Dion, don't feel bad, because most landlords are still using an Excel spreadsheet. And there's actually really a time and place for that. I do believe that there's no one size fits all. So there's no software that is right for everyone. So just because your friend whose house you went to a barbecue at says they use this type of software, that doesn't mean that software is necessarily right for you. And so that's one caveat I'll say. And I also think it's smart to start with the spreadsheet and not have any crutches to help you along, where you literally need to figure out the process and know what you're doing step by step to really make sure you're into the details. You know your tenants, you know your investment, and then you can start figuring out automation, why you're automating it, and things like that. There's basically pre-Hemlane, there were two different ways to think about software. One was software for the DIY landlord who wants to do everything themselves, including every single communication that goes to a tenant. They are manually drafting it and putting it together. And then the other type of software is ones used by professional property managers who have large portfolios, and they themselves want to have automation, but they're setting everything up themselves. In most of those types of softwares, you actually have a onboarding rep. It costs like $400 to just get started with it, who helps you get everything set up because you have 500 plus units. And that's what you need. And so those were kind of the two softwares out there. One was software for DIY. You never want any help. You're going to do everything yourself. And that's everything from like a rent collection to background and credit checks, et cetera, all the way to what the property managers use. It was kind of this middle hybrid solution for technology that we felt like was really missing, where a landlord still wants the control, 100% of that control and transparency over their units of like, why isn't my tenant paying rent? What is going on? Is it because they lost their job and they need a payment plan? Or is it something else where they're just a professional tenant and I needed to do my screening better? So some sort of solution in the middle where you still had that control, but you also had support along the way. And so that was basically where we built Hemlane to provide a hybrid model. And with that hybrid model, you can still start with DIY and do everything yourself, but then you can slowly select services that you may want us to take over. An example of that would be repair coordination. You don't want to pick up the calls and do the troubleshooting of like, did you reset the breaker? Did you check that the light bulb, if that's out and it just needs to be replaced? You don't want to do all of that, but you need something administrative to help you. That was really where Hemlane came in. And with that, we try to put best in class practices in there. A lot of times a landlord, whether you're just starting out or you're much more professional like you, Dion, you have a lot of questions like, okay, how do I make it where I'm not showing the property to a tenant who's unqualified? You're about to go through a leasing. Well, that's pre-qualification questions. What you want to do is ask in advance what questions, which are objective, would either qualify or disqualify them from the property. Dion, I know you have your own approach to that, where like you don't, from that perspective, you were talking about income and credit and how you don't even care what income they have, because you know folks with six figures who still live paycheck to paycheck. Believe me, I know a lot of those, versus ones who have great credit, have much lower income, but they are very good with their financial management. And so making sure you have those pre-qual questions that you have set up and certain things for your property to just make it a smoother experience, both for you as well as for the tenants. A lot of times at Hemlane, we think the tenants are also the customer. We have two sets of customers, you as well as the tenants. And so making it a good experience for both really helps your portfolio operate at its best performance.
It's funny, if anybody's familiar with my content, there's a long list of reasons why I haven't used software in the past. And there's a long list of reasons why I self-manage. The two main problems I have with property management is the business model of property management is to make money on tenant turnover. Mm-hmm. They do get that monthly fee, and sometimes you can do a flat rate or you can do a percentage, and you negotiate that differently, usually often based on the size of your portfolio. But as an owner, one of the most expensive things for me is tenant turnover. So I have invested in a way to try to limit tenant turnover by buying certain types of properties in certain areas and communicating with tenants a certain way. But a property manager who gets half a month or a full month's rent, if there's tenant turnover, isn't as motivated to communicate at the lease renewal time the same way that I am, because they make money from that tenant turnover. So that's the main reason. The second is I actually have a strategy where I get the tenants to request a rent increase. And that's something that works because I'm the one doing the communication. If it was a property manager, I would lose that benefit. So I'm actually able to find cash flowing deals on the MLS using traditional lending, even with high interest rates, where I can get the yield I'm looking for because I'm confident in my ability to get the tenants to literally ask me to raise the rent. So those are the two main reasons why I haven't had property management in the past. The thing that's very exciting to me, and the reason I'm actually interested in Hemlane, is as your portfolio grows, or as your lifestyle changes. For the last couple of years, I've been working a W-2 and it's pretty flexible hours. It was very easy for me to self-manage. As I'm stepping away from that W-2, I'm going to travel a lot. I'm going to want to be less involved. I still want the control that comes from being an owner occupier, somebody who runs their own portfolio, but having a portal for collecting rents and having a portal for maintenance requests. And then possibly, this is the first time I'll be looking at this, is having a leasing agent present to do tours or to do a lease signing while I'm in Colombia or Thailand or somewhere like that. I'm actually excited about that. How does this work? So I'm starting a new subscription account with Hemlane.
You start a new account. You don't even pay a subscription because it's try for free at the beginning. We want you to experience the value before you have to pay. There's some softwares out there which to try them with your own portfolio, you have to pay for it. I actually think that's a huge oversight. People they want to know what they're getting into before they pay for it, in my opinion.
Okay. And so I have listed properties on a few different sites, and it's kind of frustrating to think, I'm going to go to apartments.com and list all of this. The other thing I like is I think it's 30 sites that you guys list. So I upload the information. I basically hit one button. What are some of those sites?
Yeah, so it goes out to over 30 rental listing websites. What's really interesting, Dion, just between you and me and our audience here, is that if you look at SEO, which is search engine optimization, there's actually only 6 or 7 websites that really matter. And the data shows this because what we do is we export the data to see, well, how many leads were generated from these websites. And there's some out of that 30, which we advertise to just to make sure you are everywhere. No tenant is looking somewhere and your property isn't there. But with that process, we've seen leads are, in these majority of listing websites because they search on Google, find rental or find apartment. And these are the websites that are always at the top because they have marketing teams that just make sure they're always at the top. And so those certain websites are ones like Zillow and Trulia. HotPads, I don't know if it's still in the top 7. I believe it is, but it's also owned by Zillow. And then the other ones that you'll see is like apartments.com, realtor.com. And what's really interesting is it's different geographically. So you will find certain websites where the properties where like apartments.com is much higher than other places where Zillow is. And you as the real estate investor who owns the properties, you don't really know that. You can kind of be like, oh yeah, I keep hearing from tenants, they're searching on this place. But our data will just make sure, okay, it's published everywhere. We know that these websites are the ones that really matter, but for us, we want to be everywhere because let's just say Google search algorithm changes and it puts one of these new websites, like there's one called like Dwellsley, which I think is doing okay. And suddenly that's in the top 3. Well, we want to make sure that we're there at that time. And so while there's a couple that matter, our goal is to always assess listing websites to say what could potentially be there, and then always make sure that we're advertising to the ones that are. And so that's kind of at a high level how the advertising works. You are right with some of these tools like apartments.com, which I think you were listing on, because Cozy, which I by the way, I love Cozy and Gino, who started Cozy. He's fantastic. Though pre-Cozy, Cozy could advertise it to multiple listing websites. But when apartments.com bought them, for them, it was a basically sending leads to competitors' websites, listings to competitors' websites didn't make sense. So they had to shut off all those feeds. So it's only on apartments.com. And then you might be only getting 20% of the traffic when you should be getting it from elsewhere. So yeah, it's important to advertise on all of them. Sometimes a lot of the like free listing websites, because leasing is the time where you're not making any rental income. The free ones, they're not listing everywhere. And every day on the market that you're losing leads because it's, $60 a day that you're losing in rental income, that actually hurts you more than just saying, hey, I'm going to just do like 1 month to just get the listing out there everywhere or whatever it may be.
Okay. So the listing goes to multiple places. I like that. It makes it a lot easier on the owner. How does the rent collection work?
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, after it goes to all the listing websites, all the leads funnel back into Hemlane. So we have an API with every website. So you don't have to like log into Zillow, log into apartments.com, log into all of these. You won't have to. All the leads, all the tenant communication will be in Hemlane. So rent collection is done on Hemlane. It's bank to bank, so that's free. It's no extra cost. For the tenants to pay you bank to bank transfer. ACH is the safest way in this moment to do rent. It's very interesting with blockchain, everything else that's going on, that there might be a safer way to do rent collection in the future. ACH is still the safest way to do it because one, it's secure, and two, it's very difficult to dispute. We also offer credit and debit card. That is a 3% fee, which you can have the tenant pay. We actually highly discourage it. So we used to have a lot of real estate investors come to us saying, I really want my tenants to pay with debit or credit card. And we said, okay, great, we'll add that feature. But we put in the feature, hey, this comes with risks. Click here to view the risks. And the risks are, hey, the tenants can call up their credit card company the day they move out and dispute it. And that could come out of your bank account. And once they started reading those, the percentage that do credit or debit are so low, even though for us, like we lose money on ACH, right? We could make money on the credit and debit. That's not our goal. Our goal is to protect our users, our customers. And that's why we recommend ACH as the means of doing rent collection. It gets to your bank account in 3 business days. There's a really good NPR podcast about why ACH takes so long. We don't like hold the funds or anything. It's part of the antiquated process from the 1970s. So it's actually really interesting to watch, but ACH is how we do it. So it's bank to bank. We never hold the funds. It goes directly to your bank account.
Is there a way to set it up to where tenants can't make partial payments with ACH?
Yes, we have it where they can't make partial payments. You can put in late fees, and the late fee must be paid before the rent. So you don't have to have that awkward conversation of, or have it where they pay the rent. And then you're like, am I going to track them down for that $20? We find in most cases, tenants are good people. Like they pay on time. We've seen in our system, especially during COVID, we were watching headline news and we were actually finding it much different. Tenants were good people. They knew they had to pay in the system. They knew they didn't want the late fee to kick in. So like overall, we saw good behavior from the tenants by setting up a really good professional process.
That's my one concern with a lot of people who, like me, have been collecting rents with Venmo, PayPal, Apple Pay, Google Pay, that if I haven't had to, but if you ever have to go through an eviction and they make a partial payment, it resets the timeline on the eviction. And you can argue it in court. The attorney that I work with said, you just set that into a holding account and say you haven't received it. But still, it's an extra step where if you can actually just put a process in place to stop that from happening before it does.
Yeah, by default, we have it where it's full payment only. You can overwrite that. And we have like little tips and tricks with little eyes in the corner of like, hey, typically if you have a roommate situation, you may potentially want to do this, but this comes with risks. You might have these tenants move in who say, yeah, it would be much easier to pay with partial payment. And then you find that you get into that eviction case. So most real estate investors, we see that they will put in the system full payment only, and then they'll tell the tenants, hey, you guys can use Venmo. You can use the consumer apps and pay one another, but I'm going to be using Hemlane and one of you goes in and pays. It also doesn't allow for overpayment. So, if one of the tenants pays that full amount, it's not going to like allow the other tenant to pay it as well.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking forward to trying that out.
Yeah.
So another topic would be repair maintenance requests. So there's owners like me who use handyman, and some contractors that we've worked with in the past that we will work with. And again, so I have a roofing guy that I will be going to and a plumber I will go to. But how does it work if you need to find a contractor that you haven't worked with before?
Yeah. So when you go into the system, under the maintenance and repair section, there's something called service professionals. We call them service professionals rather than vendors, because we actually find they have one of the hardest jobs and they are really professionals at what they do. And so that's just a little bit of a nomenclature change that you might see. But you go under the service professionals section and you'd add your handyman, your general contractor, your plumber, whoever you have for these trades. And for each trade, you drag and drop them in order. So you might say, hey, I want you to call Joe, my handyman first, but if he's not available, then I want you to call my general contractor or maybe a second handyman that you have. So you would let us know who you want called in what order. If you are providing the contractor and they don't meet the insurance requirements that we have or the licensing requirements, totally fine. It's your contractor. We will call them. We will handle all of it and work through it. You'd also have thresholds. So when we're calling them and stuff, if you have something like, hey, if it's over $300, I want to call, I want to be involved, we would definitely make sure that you get that call so you don't have any surprise bills. Then we have third-party network, which is our network of service professionals. There's a couple of different ways we get those service professionals, primarily through our agents on the ground. So we have these leasing agents who help with turnovers. They also do the turnover coordination. We will have their list of pre-vetted professionals, but we take it to another level. We make sure that we know their reviews online, all of this kind of stuff as well. Because we have found certain cases where they're not as great, and sometimes you have that with your own service professionals. They used to be great, and then suddenly something happens and they're not. So we have those. And then we also go through partnerships. So we have ones like Ace Handyman. We have a corporate partnership with them, and Ace Handyman, like all the Ace stores, they have their own handyman network in it. And so we'll put those in there as well. And then we ask for reviews on all the service professionals we have. So through our partnerships, you'll have these service professionals. A lot of them, I think you might have mentioned this, or maybe it was Michael Zuber. A lot of these professionals are still on Angie's list, or now it's called, I think, just Angie, which also owns Home Advisor and stuff like that. A lot of them are also on there, so we can cross-check just to make sure that they are good. Then some of them are not. But anyways, then once we have them in our system and we've sent them out, we ask both the tenant and the real estate investor, so you, Dion, as the owner, after it's closed, how did the service professional do and how did our coordination do? We actually take those stars to understand, should we be sending them out again as well? Because sometimes we've actually seen this where the service professional had really great reviews from the agent, or they had really great reviews online from certain things. And we're like, they're not up to our quality. They did the job just fine, but they were 35 minutes late. They didn't call, they didn't respond. We had to do a lot more price negotiation. Usually it comes down to price. Price negotiation, it's always quality and price. You're balancing the two. And so our team will go through all of that and then put our own ratings into the system of how we thought the service professional was. Usually then we find gold. We find really good service professionals in an area. we want to keep them and continue to send them out. The larger the city is that you live in, the more likely we'll have a larger presence of professionals. Smaller areas, we might not. And that's where it's really good to have your own network as well.
Okay. I like the idea of leaving a review afterwards. I've had really good luck. I've been using the Thumbtack app, which is kind of like Angie's List, but more specifically contractor type stuff. And the contractors know at the end of the project, you're going to leave a review. There's one last question, and it's a little bit weird. Don't know if you've been asked this before. I am a single investor, and there is a long list of reasons why I'm single. I understand adding new properties in the future probably is very straightforward. I was looking at your website. It looks like how I will be able to figure it out. But in the future, at some point, I might have a spouse again.
But not today.
If at some point I add that spouse, how hard is it to add an extra email for the running of the account, or to change the email, or something like that changes that not too many investors have to worry about? I mean, I guess it can go the other way too. What if people split up? But how hard is the back end of that to change?
Yeah. So, I mean, let's talk about changing your email. Let's just say you guys have an email like Dion and Dion's beautiful wife at gmail.com. You could just really quickly change that for security, because we send rent payments through. You would get a text message that says your email has been updated, Dion, just to make sure if your Gmail got hacked into, they reset passwords, that you are able to see that. So we have all that security in place, but you could just easily update your email. Most likely what you would do though, Leon, is you'd go to your team and then you would add a user. It's free. You can add as many users as you want. And you would add your new wife there to the users, and then you would give her admin access or whatever access you want. We've also seen it where, like Dion, let's just say Madison, you wanted to add Madison, I think it's your daughter, to the account. What you could do is, and maybe she's helping with some things, responding to some things there, you could make it where she can't receive the rent payments. So the rent payments can only go to your email, but could do something like set up in the marketing section if she was going to take photos and upload those. So you can add all sorts of different people. We've seen folks add administrative folks to their account, significant others. They add their accountants in there. Dion, you can basically add anyone you want to that team, and you can add them to different properties. So you could say, hey, with this person, we have these 3 properties together. With this person, we have 5 properties together. And so you can make it however you want.
Okay, that maybe I just haven't figured it out, but that would be a lot easier than what I was listing on apartments.com. Adding anybody else, even handyman, to access was beyond what I was able to figure out. So
yeah,
awesome.
it is true. I think there's a difference with something like apartments.com. It's going to be very simplistic, bare bones. The actual system itself, which is fine. There's a lot of benefits to that, but we found a lot of real estate investors would come to us and say, yeah, I own property with one of my friends. When we were 23, we kind of house hacked and we bought a place, and that's one property, but now I'm addicted to it and I'm buying 4 more properties over here myself. And they want to kind of set up that differentiation, bank accounts over here, bank accounts over here. And so we kind of think of those as like power user moves. It's for power users. If they want to discover that, you don't necessarily have to, but you can get all those features.
I'm excited about this. There's a point where we invest, we're in growth mode, and we're thinking the more I take on myself, the easier and simpler it is, the easier it is to grow. But when we get to that point where we want to be less hands-on, but still have the control, this seems like, to me, the solution.
Yeah.
And so I'm excited about it.
Yeah. And I think that's it is, Dion, you're never going to want to give up control to a property manager, because you yourself know your process. You know that you want to reduce turnovers. You want to have the tenant ask for rent increases, those types of things. And you can still set up that process and be there where it matters most for you, while also saying, hey, like going into my bank account and confirming the tenant's paid the right amount every single month is like not anything that's valuable. That's just something that a computer could do a lot better than me. And I think this is where a lot of people get technology wrong. I think a lot of times people come and say technology automates people out of a job. And I actually think that's far from the truth. At least my time, I started at Apple and then went to Nest. I feel like it gives actually the user more power and control. as well as facilitates those conversations, like with FaceTime at Apple. You could be talking to people and still have these emotional conversations and things like that, but just through your phone. And so I think how we think about technology is it helps facilitate you to be able to be there for those high impact things. And then for anything administrative where you say, I don't want to do this, I just want to automate myself out of that so I can focus on the big things, or the software could alert me, I need to focus on these larger items, then you can do that.
Well, what I really like about it is, and this might be maybe a little different than some of your users that are on the platform now, I am not looking to invest for a job. I am an investor, not an entrepreneur. And right now, to self-manage my 16 rental units, it takes me about 2 hours a month.
Yeah.
And I would think that an hour and a half of that is making sure rent was paid.
Yeah.
And the purpose of investing was to get time freedom. Yeah. So if I have a system on Hemlane where it only accepts full payments, late payments are automatically put in, and then it notifies you if rent wasn't paid.
Yep, that's
without having to go and check and literally check Google Pay, Apple Pay, Venmo, my bank account for ACH to see if the payment was made and which way they chose to pay it this month. I think this is going to make it actually easier to run the portfolio that I have. And the easier your investing is, the more likely we are to want to add units, which adds to cash flow. If every time we added more properties, it increased our workload, we would be motivated not to add properties.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that's usually when landlords I talk to say they got out of their business. This was before Hemlane, or like I talked to them and they haven't heard of Hemlane. They're like, oh, it was too much work. I took that cash and I put it in stocks instead. That was much more passive. And so as much as you can say, I get the advantages and benefits of investing in real estate, I'm doing well for my community. I think a lot of people invest because of their community as well, having great housing for those. And then you can also say, I'm doing better than I would at stocks and I don't feel that administrative burden. I think is helpful. The other thing that I find is that when you set up a good process like that, it makes tenants more professional too. They don't try things. They don't say like, oh, I was late, but, with the late fee, can we waive it this time? They know there's a system and process in place and they're really going to follow that. So I found that tenants are great people too, as well, on Hemlane, and it's mutually beneficial for everyone.
And I'm guessing for more information, they should just go to hemlane.com.
Yeah, go to hemlane.com and just mention Dion Talk. If you came through Dion Talk, let us know.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much.
Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk.
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.
Not today.